What is going on, everybody, and welcome to the Wednesday. I had to think about that for a second. The Wednesday edition of the Stochastic NHL Strategy Show. I am your host, Josh Harris. All these days between Christmas and New Year's blend together more than the regular days blend together, so I don't even know what day it is, but there's 14 hockey games tonight, and so that's why we're starting a couple minutes early here. 14. That's why we're starting a couple minutes early. Give us some time to get through the games here. Joining me as always, Slim Cliffy. How was your Christmas weekend?
Pretty good. Good point on all the days feeling the same. As soon as the NHL's done, it's like every day is Saturday, pretty much until New Year's Day passes. No, it was good. I got head out of town, go visit some family, take 3 pretty relaxing days off, which was nice after the stress of having no power and then throwing my back out. So it was nice to see some family, nice to rest up a little bit. Not nice to come back to a 14 game. Wish we could space these things out a little bit more. 14 games tonight, 4 games tomorrow, but you just got to play the opponent that's put in front of you, as the coaches might say. So that's what we're going to do here. Try to get through these 14 games in a reasonable length of time.
Yeah, I wish my break was a little bit more restful. I feel so run down today. My throat's bothering me. Found out that, someone at my Christmas party, not at my house, tested positive for COVID yesterday. Islanders fan on top of it. So, if we get that, I'm bringing a stick and just breaking it over his head, Lane Lambert style. But
yeah, I must say, the rest factor, I think it's got to be completely different for people that have kids and people that don't. I don't have kids myself, so you help out a bit with the cooking and the cleaning, but you don't have to worry about assembling presents. You don't have to worry about wrapping too many presents, so on and so forth. So bit of a different story, but still some pretty interesting matchups. Lots of high totals here tonight, 14, and there are a few spots that are really sticking out in the top stacks tool, and we'll get to. But we should probably start rolling through those games.
Yeah, my 5-month-old is starting to get his first tooth, so sleep is at a premium. Yes, really. That's why he's been a Krabby Patty recently. But let's get into the slate. Before we do, as always, thank you guys so much for the support the past few weeks. If you want to support us further, you can sign up using our affiliate link. You'll see it in the description down below. I will also drop it into chat when Cliffy starts talking about the first game. And you can use promo code NHL Strategy. You'll get you 10% off weekly or monthly memberships for NHL. So thank you guys very much. Let's get into this first game here. We have the Columbus Blue Jackets with a 2.8 total heading into New Jersey. The Devils have a 4.1 total. Miserable weather in New Jersey today, but you don't play hockey outside, so it doesn't really matter. News here, Alex Holtz up to the Nico Hischier line with Palat, Jack Hughes line, status quo. Timo Meier with Dawson Mercer and Michael McLeod on the third line here. Big game right off the jump. Devils have the highest total on the board at 4.1%. This is a 14-game slate, and they have 2 lines coming in at double digits, which for a 14-game slate is pretty high. The Devils' Jack Hughes line, I believe, is the second or third most expensive line on the slate at $22,200. This is a very good spot. They're coming in with almost 10% positive leverage. They are coming in with double-digit ownership, but, they're fully correlated. I like them. There's not a matchup that concerns me. And like you always mention, it's kind of hard to stack the power play guys without Jack Hughes, so you might as well stack that Hughes line. If you want to go to the Nico Hischier line, $12,200, I get it, but they're coming in with a 1.2% top 2 stack and a 10% ownership share. At that point, you might as well just save the extra $300 and go down to Timo Meier, Dawson Mercer, and Michael McLeod. So Jack Hughes line, Devils third line. On the Columbus side, the Devils goalies are awful, so there is some merit to going to, I don't even know what line to go to here because the Marchenko, Chinnikov, Voronkov line just riding waves here. They've had 3 or 4 days off. I'd probably just go to Gaudreau, Fantilli, Danforth line. They are coming with pretty high negative leverage for Columbus. I don't know. I might just avoid them at all costs here.
Yeah, interesting on what to do with Columbus, because they are coming in over owned, but they're not that expensive. And as you mentioned, like this New Jersey goaltending, I mean, they've had problems pretty much dating back like 3-4 years now. Certainly over the last couple seasons. That's, we saw that just in the playoffs, and it makes it a little bit interesting to try to go to the Columbus side, but outside of the penalty kill, or outside of the goaltending, the penalty kill for New Jersey is not bad. And like, it doesn't make me super excited to go to that all Russian Columbus line that, they're all on the top power play unit together. I certainly get why you'd want to use them. They're a pseudo top line that's perfectly correlated on the power play, going up against bottom 3 goaltending in the league. And they're priced as a filler stack that you can put with super expensive stacks elsewhere on the slate. So I get wanting to use that particular Columbus line. It is the New Jersey side that I do like better, obviously. Hughes, Bratt, and Toffoli. They do have good offensive numbers together. I wrote about Tyler Toffoli in the picks article today up on Stokastic.com. Just head to the NHL section. It's free to read almost every day. 3.5 expected goals, 3.4 actual goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5, all on the top power play unit. The price, Tyler Toffoli is the cheapest he's been since opening night. Part of that is there's been a nice time drop, and I think that's the one notable thing I'll mention about New Jersey here. Like, it's a good matchup for them at all strengths. 5-on-5 penalty kill. Columbus's penalty kill has just fallen apart over the last month. But what I will say is there has been some ice time losses. Like, Jack Hughes over the last 8 games or something like that is under 20 minutes on average per night. Tyler Toffoli, he's in the low 16s. Jesper Bratt around 17. Like, these are guys, not necessarily Toffoli, even though he does have a bunch of games over 20 minutes, but Hughes especially, he was a guy playing 22, 23 minutes a night at times. It's not necessarily a death knell playing those types of minutes, but when you're paying $22,200, I want the wingers to get more than 16, 17 minutes of ice time. And it's not just a function of blowing teams out. Like, there have been some close games of late where they still don't play a lot. They've been giving more time to the second and third lines. So I have no problem using New Jersey 1 here. I do think that there are other expensive spots. Like, you're right about, meant to pull up the top stacks tool. I should probably try to do that instead. Just bear with us in our first show back. There it is. 22.1% top 2 stack, 11.3% ownership. So the leverage is just fine. If you want to just use Jack Hughes by himself and one off him, go right ahead. I really do like that New Jersey 2 line. New Jersey 3 is one that's kind of sticking out to me. Meyer, Mercer, McLeod. You get guys on the second power play unit. McLeod, I think, has played pretty well this year, especially when they were missing Hughes and Hischier earlier in the season. The numbers together aren't really that good. I wonder how much of it is just Timo Meyer or even Dawson Mercer. Dawson Mercer hasn't played all that well. But I do love that New Jersey line. I just think, considering the ice time concerns and how many expensive lines there are elsewhere on the slate, like, we'll get to Minnesota, we'll get to Colorado, we'll get to, Toronto, we'll get to, Boston. Like, there are other expensive lines where the guys could play 19, 20, 21 minutes each, and they're not going to be coming in with as much ownership. So I really do like New Jersey too. I'm just worried about the ice time.
Yeah. And let's move on to the next one. Before we do, we have a $25 super chat from Paul Siafi. If I messed up your last name, welcome to the club. Thank you, gents, for all that you do. Thank you for tuning in when we have a show. We appreciate you.
Yeah, certainly. Thanks a lot for that super chat. Generous. Still in the Christmas giving spirit is Paul. Thanks for the support. We appreciate you guys watching. Hopefully we can help a few people win some money here tonight.
I was feeling pretty good about my beard, but man, yours is glorious.
The family members were liking it, but they don't want it to get too much longer, because they don't want me to look like I've been sleeping under a bridge for a year or something.
A couple more months, you can star on the next season of Duck Dynasty.
Exactly.
Washington Capitals with a 2.4 total heading into New Jersey. Not New Jersey, New York. The Rangers have a 3.2 total. Washington has one of the lowest totals on the slate at 2.4, only behind the Sharks, who play in the nightcap per usual. Any big slate always has to finish with the Sharks. I don't know, man. Like, I know Igor hasn't been great and yada, 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 yada. I just don't really like these lines. Like, if you want to play Strome, Ovechkin, Wilson in your 150 mix and you have a couple, fine, go for it. 1 to 3. This is one of those lines where if it burns me, it burns me. I'm not making my night on a 2.4 road total. If you need a cheap 2-man, I think McMichael and Mantha are fine, or, to be in your MME mix, but Washington is strictly MME only. Rangers are a bit more interesting for me. They do only have a 3.2 total, which is, okay. I mean, there are a lot of home totals here tonight, but a lot of large home totals tonight. It is depressing the ownership on the Rangers a bit, but I kind of like that. Like, I don't mind. Like, as Rangers 2 has been chalked recently. Now they're coming in at 2.5%. Rangers top line 1.1%. And that Rangers top line with Wheeler there has been pretty good. And they're only 15,600. So I don't mind for a mid-range line going to the Rangers 1. So I'm in on the Rangers top 6 here.
Yeah, I'm kind of at a loss what to do with Washington here because, yeah, you're right. Clearly the lowest total on the slate. You feel like eventually the goals got to start going in, right? Like, over the last 4 weeks, that Washington top line is at 3.8 expected goals per 60 minutes, but 1.5 actual goals. They're shooting under 4%. Like, maybe it lasts the entire season. Maybe Ovechkin is washed, but Ovechkin has 25 shots in his last 5 games. Before the break, we talked about how bad the Rangers defense had been, and it's been a big problem for them basically since Thanksgiving, or American Thanksgiving, I should say. Whether the first line or the second line, it doesn't really matter. And Anthony Mantha on the top power play unit has changed things a little bit for Washington. It's still a small sample. We're only looking at 20 minutes, but their goal scoring rate has basically doubled with Mantha on the top power play. And not only that, they've added something like 12% to their shot attempts compared to what they were doing before Mantha. So, I'm not playing Washington on the road on a 14-game slate in a single entry, but I think your point about if you're playing 20 max or 150 or something like that is one to take. Is maybe you do want to include a little bit of Washington here. They're not super expensive. The matchup really isn't that bad at 5-on-5. I don't mind Washington 1 here. But again, I think in single entry, you can kind of pass on them. The question is what to do about the Rangers. That Washington top line does have good defensive numbers together. Under 2 expected goals against per 60 over those last 4 weeks, right around 2 goals against per 60 at 5-on-5. Kind of not a great power play matchup because Washington doesn't take a ton of penalties. They're right around the league average. The Rangers don't draw a ton of power plays. Again, they're right around the league average. Just play the good lines. I would go back to the Rangers too, but I think this is kind of a situation where, if I'm in a single entry on a 14-game slate, I might just look elsewhere for my stacks.
Yeah, I think, in single entry, unless you're going straight homer like me, I mean, if I was going to go straight homer, I would put some Rangers in, but I don't think they're going to be high on my list tonight. Let's move on to the next one. Florida Panthers with a 3.2 total heading into Tampa Bay. The Lightning have a 3.3 total. This is an interesting game because Tampa Bay is kind of perceived as a good defensive team, and Florida is kind of perceived as a bad one. And the roles are kind of reversed here. Florida has a very good penalty kill. Tampa Bay's penalty kill isn't great. Florida's Barkov line has been excellent defensively. Tampa Bay hasn't been great defensively. So I almost prefer – actually, I do think I prefer the Florida side from a stacking standpoint. From a Kucherov standpoint, I think he's low owned tonight. I definitely think you can one-off him here or, put him with point. Nick Paul doesn't really do too much for me. He's been bad at 5-on-5. He's been bad on the power play. Tampa 2 is a bit interesting. Hagel, Cirelli, Stamkos. But I think I'm in more on the Florida second line here for Hagee, Bennett, Tkachuk. We keep saying it. Eventually, Tkachuk's going to break through with the goals, and when it does, it's going to be glorious. I know it is Vasilevsky in net, but I think I'm more on the Florida side here.
Yeah, so I wrote up the Florida top line in the picks article today as one of the stacks to use. And there are a few reasons for that. One, there's not a lot of ownership. This is the top stacks for Florida, Tampa Bay. That Florida top line, 2.6% top two stack percentage, 0.3% ownership. In fact, like there's some good lines here getting good top two stack probabilities and no lines coming in with 3% ownership or above. So there's 6.5 total in this game, two pretty good offenses, and there's not going to be much ownership here. And that's really interesting for me. The reason I wrote up the Florida top line is they've gotten away from using Kucherov and Point in a shutdown role, like primarily. I don't want to say shutdown role, but out against opposing top lines. They were using Stamkos and Cirelli right before the break after Brandon Hagel joined that line. And you and I have talked all season about how bad Stamkos and Cirelli have been together. They've just been not good. Like, I don't know what else to say. Stamkos and Cirelli have pretty bad defensive numbers together. That's why I wrote up the Florida top line in the picks article. 2.9 expected goals against for Cirelli and Stamkos. That's easily below average. 3.5 expected goals against per 60 at 5-on-5 this season. It's just bad defensive numbers. And Brandon Hagel, he's a pretty good offensive player, but he won't add a big defensive dimension to that line. And that worries me for their shutdown role, but I think it puts Florida 2 in a pretty good spot. And Florida 2 has been really, really good all season. Their last 10 games alone, 3.6 expected goals for, 4.5 actual goals for per 60 minutes, 5-on-5. Like, if I'm looking for a sub 1% line, that's expensive, but not super prohibitive. Like maybe like the New Jersey Jack Hughes line that we just talked about. Like, these guys are under 20K all in on DraftKings. So I kind of like Florida 1 in this matchup. I think both Florida lines are perfectly fine. Like, this isn't a matchup I'm terribly afraid of. And it's a 3.2 total. Like, that's, for a road total, I don't care how many games are on the slate. That's a good total. And I think Florida 1's kind of shown themselves to be pretty good all season long, and I'm not worried about them. Maybe they don't show up. It's the first game after the break. They had to travel. They weren't allowed to travel until midnight, et cetera, et cetera. We'll see what happens. I considering the extreme low ownership we have on Florida 1, I like them here tonight. On the Tampa side, I'm not really big on Tampa here tonight. Like, Florida's a pretty good defensive team. I think that's something that's kind of getting lost in a bit of their success this year, is that they just straight up are a really good defensive team. I was looking at, they're right around the top 10, near Carolina and Seattle by expected goals against over the last few weeks. Their penalty kill has generally been very, very good. Tampa really has to get there on the power play. Florida's not taking a ton of penalties. Plus, they have a good penalty kill. Like, honestly, if I'm taking any stack out of this game, I think it's Florida 1.
Yeah, agreed. Or Florida. I mean, I like Florida 2 as well, but like, we've been more on Florida 1 just because their ownership has been way less. Ottawa Senators with a 3.1 total heading into Toronto. The Leafs have a 3.8 total. It is Martin Jones starting today, and I'm not prepared. I'm just not prepared for Marty Jones to be starting. A little bit low energy today, but I'm sure he'll get another start, and we can set off some horns. We can set off some, I'll hire a mariachi band or something for the next time he starts. I'll make it up to you guys. But interesting game here because Stützle and Norris finally swap spots. Top line is Stützle, Giroux, Tkachuk. Second line is Norris, Batherson, Tarasenko. Now, we have those a little bit flip-flopped in the lineup builder or in the top stacks, but we'll get that settled. Also, shout out Angus Crookshanks. Appreciate Hermione's cat making it to the NHL. Just wanted to give him his proper due. Kind of funny to see Toronto's second line have a higher top two stack percentage than a Matthews line. Now, I don't know if I completely believe it. Now that Matthews and Marner are together, I don't know. Like, maybe Marner is feeling better. Maybe the break is just what the doctor ordered. But I want to see the Ottawa ownership run with the guys flipped. I don't think it'll make a huge difference. But Tkachuk, Stützle, Giroux is my favorite Ottawa iteration of that top line. not a huge worry about Toronto matchups. Martin Jones in net. I think Toronto 1 and Toronto 2 are perfectly fine plays, but I think like if you can get that Stützle, Kachuk, Giroux line around 2-3%, I'm definitely interested in that.
Yeah. Speaking of teams struggling defensively, again, before the break, you and I were talking about how Toronto really wasn't doing well in the 4 weeks leading up to the break. The final 2.5 weeks of the season, whatever you want to call it. Toronto had some pretty bad defensive numbers of their own. They were 28th, I believe, by expected goals against at 5-on-5 in that stretch. They were worse than teams like Buffalo, Montreal, Detroit, and Anaheim. So certainly Toronto had been struggling defensively. That Ottawa top line, 3.6 expected goals, 3.6 actual goals per 60 minutes. Now, a lot of those minutes were played under DJ Smith. There's no sample under Jacques Martin, but I'm not super worried about those three guys being able to generate offense. So I don't mind Ottawa 1 here tonight. What's interesting to me is seeing Norris and Tarasenko and Batherson down on that second line because, man, that looks like a bad defensive line to me. We're in our Discord, we were talking a little bit about Josh Norris earlier today. His metrics, whether you want to look at shot metrics, playmaking metrics, whatever, they're just terrible this year. Like, there's just no way around it. Like, there's nothing good to say about it. I think he's assisting on a lot of deflections, which was the one thing that stood out. Like, he's not doing anything. And Tarasenko, he's had really good playmaking numbers, but he's not improved defensively at all from the end of his tenure since like he's just gotten worse defensively since those shoulder injuries started. He's just getting old. That's what it is. He's like 33 years old now, I think. So that Ottawa 2 line looks pretty bad defensively. Nylander, Tavares, and Tyler Bertuzzi, 3.7 expected goals per 60 minutes and 175 minutes together. Nylander, 24 shots and 9 points in his last 5 games. Looks like he's found it that level again. I don't mind, honestly, I don't mind some sort of power play stack here from Toronto. Like, if you want to do Matthews, Tavares, Nylander, Matthews, Marner, Nylander, something like that, I think that's perfectly fine. Even strength lines. I like the Toronto second line. I like their matchup here tonight. I think both lines are more than fair to play, and there is positive leverage coming in on that Matthews line, 8% top 2 stack, 4% ownership here tonight as a trio. I just think I particularly like a power play matchup here because Ottawa does take their fair share of penalties, 3.5 times shorthanded per game. The penalty kill has just completely fallen apart over the last, month. It's eighth most shots against per minute. Their goals against per minute, dead last in the NHL. I do like some sort of Toronto power play stack, but I just really like the spot for the Toronto top 6 in general. I'm just watching to see how flat they come out after the Christmas break at home against a divisional rival. I hope they don't, because I think this is a really good spot for the Leafs, and especially that second line is kind of going overlooked.
Yeah, I agree there. And if you are better, I do something on my Twitter called the big dog plus money prop of the night. I'll put out a plus money prop almost every night tonight. Matthews, they're hanging plus 190 for Matthews power play point in this spot.
Against the team giving up the most power play goals against per minute over the last month. I mean, seems decent.
Just for reference, if you wanted to do Nathan McKinnon power play point, I think he's minus 135. Mm-hmm. So there you go. Boston's the Boston Sabres, man. I need a CAT scan. Boston Bruins with a 3.5 total heading into Buffalo. The Sabres have a 3 total. This is another interesting game. A lot of these games are good matchups. It's not a ton of massive favorites. There are a couple, but for a 14-game slate, I think the matchmaking is pretty decent here. Buffalo has been better of late. Not really a surprise when you get Tage Thompson and Jack Quinn, and you get Devin Levi back up with his head on his shoulders, and you get improvements on the blue line. The Bruins aren't great defensively, and I'm seeing 0.4% here on Buffalo 1, and I'm going 19-2. This is a $21,000 and change line again if they're rolling. I said it the last time. I don't know, man. I like Buffalo 1 here a lot. On the flip side, I don't particularly love the iterations of these lines. I think David Pastrnak is a great one-off as always. I don't really want a full stack like Coyle, DeBrusk, Marchand, or Zacha, Pastrnak, Heinen. Like, I think it's fine, but they're coming in with a little bit of negative leverage. I'd rather get the positive leverage on a line that's underpriced when they're fully rolling, and they've been showing signs of life. So I kind of want to keep that going on the ownership play here.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem going with Buffalo here, especially Boston's been taking a lot more penalty. Like they've generally been a team that's taken a few penalties, more than their fair share of penalties this season, but they're up all the way to second most power play opportunities given up per game to the opponent. You know, the Buffalo power play has all their guys back. It was deadly for most of last year. Now, Boston's penalty kill has still stayed pretty good. So it's not like, you know, this isn't like Ottawa, like we just talked about. This is a situation where Boston could, you know, give up like 5 power plays and kill all 5 off fairly easily. I did write up Jack Quinn in the picks article. He's back on that second line with Cousins and Peterka. You know, they were really, really good last year. 3.5 expected goals for per 60 minutes, 5-on-5. Quinn has 2 goals in 3 games. I think like playing him as a one-off against a Boston team that's been pretty middle of the pack defensively at 5-on-5 over the last month. I think something like a Jack Quinn one-off certainly makes a lot of sense. Boston is the side that kind of interests me here. Like, I get your point about this not being the best iteration of the lines. Like, I would definitely want Marchand on the top line over Dan Heinen and then just pay the difference. Like, I would certainly love to see that. I'd even take a James Van Riemsdyk or something at this point. But it's a 5.5% ownership against 5.4% top 2 stack percentage for that Boston top line. The Buffalo penalty kill has been amongst the worst in the league for basically like 5 weeks now since American Thanksgiving. We're looking at the 4th most shots against and the 5th most goals against per minute while shorthanded over the last 5 weeks. So, if you just want one off David Pastrnak, I think that's perfectly fine. Obviously, he's going to get involved if the team does go off. But I don't mind the Boston top line here. I think a 5.5% ownership and a 3.5 total, like that's tied for the 3rd highest road total on the slate here tonight. I certainly don't mind Boston 1. If you want to turn it into a power play stack by itself, take Heinen off, put Marchand on or something like that, I think that's perfectly fine. I think for me in this game, it's Boston 1, and then I don't mind, maybe like a 2-man from Buffalo 2 or something like that. But it's particularly a Jack Quinn one-off.
I'm always a fan of a Jack Quinn one-off here. I'm a big fan of his, and I think that he makes their team so much deeper. Before we get to the next one, as I mentioned at the top, if you use our affiliate link to sign up for NHL, you can get 10% off using promo code NHL Strategy. What you get with that: player and ownership projections, top stacks, tools, lines, combinations, access to the premium Discord, where Cliffy's always dropping a bunch of gems in there. I'm always in there. Jake and his Giga Chad jawline are always in there. Haas is giving you techniques on how to grill in catering trays. That's optional. You don't have to partake in that festival, but you do get the top stacks. You get all that stuff. You get access to the Discord. Tons of sharp guys in there. If you have strategy questions, whatever, ask away. Say you came from the show. Make sure to go through the affiliate link I just dropped in the chat. You get 10% off using promo code NHL Strategy. Pittsburgh Penguins with a 3 total heading into the Long Island. I met Islanders fans in the wild over the weekend. Rare sight. The Islanders have a 3.1 total. Shocker, they weren't huge Lane Lambert fans. I don't know who is, but this is another interesting matchup here because the Islanders' penalty kill is awful. The Penguins' power play is awful, although it has been a little bit better of late. Now, the teams that they played have been bad, but you know what they're doing? they're winning the draw. And if they lose the draw, they're screwed because they can't set up. They can't enter the zone and set up. But if they win the draw, they can set up and make some noise. I don't know what that is, but I don't know. I think this is a pretty good spot for Pitt 1 here. 3.2% ownership, 6.7% top 2 stack percentage. They're under 20,000. You're talking about Buffalo 1 with a discount. You're getting Pitt 1 at a discount here. It's not. They only have a 3 total, but again, let's not pretend the Islanders are very good defensively. Yes, Sorokin has been very, very good recently. He still gave up 4 goals to Carolina the other night. But, it seems like if the Islanders take penalties, they're giving up goals. I don't understand what's going on with their penalty kill. It's one of these things where, something has to give in this game. Either the Islanders penalty kill figures it out or Pittsburgh power play figures it out. But with 19,400, when this line is generally 21 and change, I'll take some stabs on the Penguins top line. On the flip side, I think there is merit to going to either of the top 2 Islanders lines. Now, I don't know if you need to do it in 1 to 3, but they do have a 3.1 total. That's nothing to sneeze at. I don't think the Penguins are very good defensively, so they do have a pretty good penalty kill. So I'd be more apt to go for the 5-on-5 lines here. And for that reason, I probably go to the second line just because they're cheaper. They're a good filler stack. And they're just better at 5-on-5. I mean, I know the top line has gotten better since Lee has gotten there. But, I think both are fine. I'm leaning towards Islanders 2, and I do like Pitt 1.
Yeah, I also like Pittsburgh 1 here because you're right about that Islanders penalty kill. Over the last 4 weeks, it's generally not been good all season. Over the last 4 weeks, second most shots against per 60 minutes while on the penalty kill, 7th most goals against per minute, worse than teams like Arizona and San Jose. It's just been a bad PK. And the power play has been better at Pustin in there. It's still a small sample. You're talking about the bad teams that they played, like Arizona, Montreal, Minnesota, Ottawa. Those are all teams with bad penalty kills. The Islanders have a bad penalty kill. This is just another team like one of those. So I really don't mind Pittsburgh 1 here tonight. The Islanders top line is what's interesting to me because, yes, they have been a lot better with Anders Lee there. And I was just looking at, their last few weeks to see if they had fallen off after a hot start. In their last 3 weeks together, 3.8 expected goals, 6.6 actual goals per 60 minutes of 5-on-5. Those are really good numbers. Now, Pittsburgh's top line has been better defensively with Rickard Rakell there. Still not a big sample, though. And the Islanders don't really use that top line to shut down roll a ton anyway. I don't mind the Islanders top line here tonight. I'm going to be honest. I don't think this is a game where I'm going to be going to get my stacks, though. This kind of seems to me like one of those, it's perfectly fine, especially with the ownership. Like you were talking about the Islanders ownership, there's very little coming in on the top line, and they have 3.7 top 2 stack probability. It's about the same for the Pittsburgh top line. So for ownership reasons, I really don't mind both top lines here. I would probably lean to the Islanders top line, like in one of those tie-breaking scenarios. I'd always kind of lean to the home team. So I think I like Islanders 1, but if adding Puustinen has legitimately made this power play better, we'll need a bigger sample to figure it out, but this is a pretty good spot for it. So I think both top lines are definitely in play here, though on a slate this large, I might personally be looking elsewhere in a single entry format.
Yeah, and single entry stacking a game in Long Island just is mentally miserable. Detroit Red Wings with a 3 total heading into Minnesota. The Wild have a 3.5 total. Ryan Hartman returns for the Wild. Spurgeon and Zuccarello are still out. So they're going Kaprizov, Joel Eriksson, Matt Boldy. Then they got Rossi, Johansson, and Hartman. Detroit still with the loaded top line. No one's playing them here tonight. They're $21,500, $200 cheaper than Minnesota 1, who's getting 16.4% projected ownership to 0.1% for Detroit 1. I'm not saying play Detroit 1 in single entry. I'm not saying that at all. But they are a fully correlated line. against a pretty poopers penalty kill at 0.1%. Now they're on the road. It's 14-game slate. They have a 3 total. I completely get it. And they're overpriced compared to all of that. But the Minnesota Wild penalty kill is atrocious. If you have 20 lineups or 150, 20 lineups having 1 of 20, 150 lineups having a handful, I think that's an interesting play. The more pressing matter is what to do with Minnesota 1 here, right? Because Detroit sucks defensively too. They do have some positive leverage, but there is, Colorado on this slate. There are other expensive spots. Do you want to be paying almost $22,000 for a 16% line on a 14-game slate? I think it's warranted. I still don't know if I'm going to do it. I don't mind a Marco Rossi one-off or two-manning him with Hartman, just, getting the lower ownership. Rossi's on the top power play unit. What are your thoughts on Minnesota 1? Because I seem to be struggling with them being so expensive since they put this line together. I almost never know what to do with them because Colorado 1 isn't much more expensive. They are, but they're not. And they're going to play 22, 23, 24 minutes. With John Hines, you don't know if Matt Boldy's going to make it past 18.
Yeah. No. Your point about wanting to pay that much for Minnesota is well taken. I think one thing that's happening with the Minnesota top line is they're actually generating high levels of quality offense. And honestly, that had been a problem for the top line for a year now. Going back to this time last season, they just weren't generating a lot of quality. The top line, 2.1, 2.2, 2.3 expected goals per 60 minutes of 5-on-5, pretty bad offensive numbers for what should be such a talented top line. That's really changed under John Hines. They're up to 3 expected goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5 under Hines, with Eriksson and Kaprizov on the ice, 3.8 actual goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. They're getting top line minutes, which is one of the concerns that I had with John Hines coming in. And now Boldy wasn't playing a ton of minutes in his first few games under the new coach, but his last 3 games, I think he's been over 21 minutes in every game. So they're actually getting a lot of ice time. And this is one of the better power play spots on the slate. Detroit does take a lot of penalties. They're at 3.6 times shorthanded per game, as much as Minnesota actually. And the Detroit penalty kill has just not been that good. Yes, Minnesota's penalty kill has been bad. They've been saved by their goaltending of late. So, that certainly helped. Detroit's also in the bottom 10 for shots against on the PK over the last 4 weeks, or 4 weeks and change. That's something that Minnesota can kind of feast on. So I don't really have a problem with playing Minnesota at their high ownership. You were saying 16.4% ownership, 22.7% top 2 stack percentage. I think this is a perfectly fine matchup to use Minnesota 1, even at 15, 16%. There are not enough spots to get different on a slate this large that 15, 16, 17% ownership doesn't really bother me. So I really do like Minnesota 1. I'm not so high on their depth lines. I think this is a special teams matchup for both sides. And your point about Detroit is a good one because, as I said, the Minnesota penalty kill is still giving up a ton of shots while they're shorthanded. They're actually giving up the 5th most shots per minute since they hired their new coach. That's a 13-game span now. The difference has been they've got 934 goaltending while on the PK. Any penalty kill will look good when you're getting 93.4% save percentage. So that's going to fall through eventually. They have to start allowing fewer shots. Detroit has had a pretty lethal power play at times this season. There is no ownership on them, like you were talking about, 0.1% ownership. I don't think I would play them in a single entry because you're really relying on probably a double dong on the power play to try to get what you need for value in a DFS tournament, because Minnesota has been the best defensive team in the league since Hines was hired. It's been 30 days now. They played 13 games. At 5-on-5, they're first by expected goals against per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. and they're first by actual goals against per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. Detroit almost certainly needs to double down on the power play. That's why it's like I think it's kind of thin for a single entry, and they probably have to score 5-on-5 on top of that. So like you're asking a lot for a pretty brutal matchup where you're just depending on the power play having a monster night. That's why I think this is more a case for like having like 2 or 3 Detroit ones in your 150 mix rather than playing Detroit one in a single entry.
Oh yeah, I agree with that too. Like I'm not strongly considering them in single entry, but I think if I was playing 150, having at least 5, having like 3% or something like that is completely fine. Now I know we saved defensemen for the end, but just wanted to say like there's been a ton of buzz about Brock Faber with Jared Spurgeon out. He plays over 30 minutes. The guy is not a shooter. So, like, if you're expecting this combo meal from him, like, I've seen people, like, yelling about how he's such a great play. Even in the minors, he wasn't a big shooter. So you're kind of relying on him to hit the score sheet with assists more than you are getting the stuff. Fine play. Just want to get that off my chest.
Yeah, better put him on the slander list.
I don't know if that's slander because I have been playing him, but I don't expect, like, 30 fantasy points. You know what I mean?
Slander list.
We'll get a ruling from Clayton later because he pretty much scribes the whole chat, which is incredible, by the way. Carolina Hurricanes with a 3.2 chat. I'm scheduling a CAT scan after this. 3.2. Carolina with a 3.2 total heading into Nashville. The Predators have a 2.9 total. No one's getting ownership in this game. All the lines are projected under 1%, except for the Kotkaniemi, Netchus, Svechnikov line. I think that line is perfectly fine. They're going to avoid Ryan O'Reilly. And the depth for Nashville isn't very good defensively now. UC Saros probably in net. Will that deter you? In MME, you still can have some. Well, the most interesting line to me in this game, and I value most of this game as MME, is Nashville 1, right? Because they're going to avoid the stall line. They're going to get the Aho, Jarvis, Teravainen line. And the biggest thing of all, the Carolina goaltending sucks. So, like, as good as Carolina is defensively, that Ryan O'Reilly line avoids the best defensive line, and they get a crap goaltender. And at 0.9%, I think getting above the field, 1, is easy, and 2, I would be above it. In MME, can you play them in single entry? Sure. I don't think I'm going to get there, but they are definitely a line in the mid-range. They're 17,400 that I would be considering in 20 max. On the flip side, just real quick, sorry, Carolina 1 I think is fine. It's a pretty tough 5-on-5 matchup, but Nashville's struggled pretty heavily on the PK. So, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I'll just say the only line that really interests me is Nashville 1. The way Carolina's been switching their lines around kind of make me nervous. They're John Tortorellaing their line combinations pretty much on a nightly basis. And, Aho and Svechnikov, they've been doing what Carolina does, which is generate a lot of offense, but not a lot of goals. 3.4 expected goals per 60 minutes, but only shooting 6.5% together. Nashville's top line has, their offensive play has fallen off a little bit, but their defense is still, league average. And I don't think that's necessarily good enough to warrant, playing Carolina on the road when they basically have 4 lines that can score. That's kind of the other point here is like, this isn't like a Colorado or even something like Minnesota that we just saw, where you could probably guess which line is going to explode if they have a big offensive night. Like Carolina could score 5 goals here tonight, and all 5 goals either come from the defenseman or the fourth line. Like that's just kind of the way that they play. So the only line that I'm really interested in for tournament stacking is Nashville 1. Their offense has fallen off though. Kochetkov has been better of late. Like he had that one bad game right before the break, but he had like a bunch of good starts before that. So I'm going to be honest, like there are enough lines here tonight that are like, under 2%, even under 1% ownership that I think I would rather go to. This is not a spot where I'm really running out to stack forward lines.
Yeah. Dallas Stars with a 3.6 total heading into St. Louis. The Blues have a 2.9 total. Another interesting game because I believe Ottinger is week to week. I haven't seen an update on him. Stars haven't confirmed a goal yet, but most likely it's going to be Wedgwood. Now, 3.6 road total is the biggest on the night, tied with Vegas. It is the Blues. I mean, they're bad. Is this a night where you go back to Dallas one? I don't know. Like, I think they're fine. They're 18,603% projected. I just feel like going back to Sagan, Duchesne, Marchment, like their price hasn't really moved in months. They're playing, 15, 16, 17 minutes. They're not going to get the Kyrou, Thomas, Buchnevich line. Not that, they're an elite shutdown line or whatever. But the depth of the Blues is atrocious. Duchesne, Sagan, and Marchment can take advantage of that. If you want to go to Dallas 1, I think, this is a pretty good time at that price, at that ownership. So I'm fine with the Dallas top 6 here. I'm going back to the Blues top line. 2.9 total for a one-line team is pretty good here. So they're coming in with a tiny bit of negative leverage at 4.4% projected compared to a 3.1 top stack. 16,500. They've been playing well outside of that one game they got benched. I think that kind of lit a fire under them a little bit. But, Dallas is a good defensive team, but with Wedgwood or worse than that, I'm going to take a stab on St. Louis 1.
So I want to mention that Dallas's top line has been generating more offense at 5-on-5, I believe. That was the one thing that was a big problem for them basically through the first 2 months of the season was they weren't generating a ton of 5-on-5. They were still efficient with their shots, but because they're generating less, they were scoring less than last year, and they're really living on the power play. Like Robertson and Hintz have both gotten like roughly 1/3 of their production this year on the power play. And St. Louis is not a team that takes penalties. That's kind of my problem here. St. Louis is, I think they're the least penalized team in the league still, 2.73 times shorthanded per game. That's even less than Columbus that we talked about earlier. So where you have got, at least 2 guys on the top line, and I think like half of Pavelski's goals will come on the power play. So like this is a line that really needs the power play to thrive. I'm just not sure that this is a great power play spot to do it. It's kind of why I'm with you. I think I like Dallas too a little bit better here. And there are a couple reasons for that. Obviously, one, the power play matchup doesn't matter as much. And 2 is Braden Shen and Jake Neighbors.
They fucking suck.
They have terrible defensive numbers together. 81 shot attempts against per 60 minutes of 5-on-5. Like that's legitimately a good penalty kill. So it's basically a good penalty kill whenever they're on the ice of 5-on-5. 3.2 actual goals against per 60 minutes. We know how good Duchesne, Sagan, and Marchment have been most of this year. They did get broken up in the last game, but I'm not super concerned about that. Like this team seems pretty. They seem like they really want to make this current iteration of the lineup work, at least the top 9 as it is. So I think it's going back to our guys, Dallas too. Duchesne, Sagan, and Marchment still getting reasonable ice time. The offensive numbers have slipped a little bit. They're under 2 expected goals per 60 minutes over their last 9 games, but they're shooting over 10% because they are still such a talented line, and it's a great 5-on-5 matchup for them. I think I like Dallas 2 best here. They are coming in with negative leverage, 0.9% top 2 stack, 2.3% ownership on the top stacks tool. But I think this is a really, really good matchup at 5-on-5 for Dallas 2. So I like Dallas 2 in this matchup. Dallas is a really good defensive team. Their goaltending has kind of let them down. If this was a situation where St. Louis's top line was coming in at like 1% or something like that, I think I'd probably go with them. But they're another line that's coming in with negative leverage, 4.4% ownership, 3.1% top 2 stack. Dallas's penalty kill has generally been good this year. So, I don't mind going to St. Louis 1 because they are perfectly correlated, but I think it's Dallas 2 that I like best in this game.
Yeah. And if you're just, if you need a one-off from that line, it's probably Duchesne just because he usually plays the most minutes of those 3. Gotten that question a bunch about that line. So I was thinking about it, so I just answered it in my head for you guys. There you go. Colorado Avalanche with a 3.5 total Heading into Arizona, the Coyotes have a 2.9 total. Vejmelka in net for Arizona tonight. I'm out of things to say about Colorado 1. If you can fit them comfortably, you play them. Especially tonight, because they're only coming in with 7% ownership. And it's a 14-game slate, and they have a 31.4% top two stack percentage. That doesn't mean they're going to break the slate. It just means they have a 30% chance to be a top two stack, which there are a lot of stacks. There are 28 teams, 4 lines per team. Quick math, that's 132 lines, and they have 31% to be in the top two. I think I did that math right. Yeah, I did. If you can fit them comfortably and you like the lineup, you play them. If you can't fit something you like, you look elsewhere. 25-5, it's more than 50% of the cap. What to do with Arizona? That top line has been pretty good with Kerfoot, as crazy as that sounds. They're 14,700. Their ownership is double their top two stack percentage, which for Arizona worries me a bit, but they are pretty correlated. Colorado takes a lot of penalties, and their goaltending hasn't been great of late. So I think you can take a couple stabs on Arizona 1. Arizona 2 is another one of those lines that I throw into the well with Dallas 2. If you need a filler line at lower ownership, pretty cheap, I'll never say no to Arizona 2, but I actually prefer both top lines here.
Yeah, I wrote up Arizona 2 in the picks article for a couple reasons. One, they've been used more in a shutdown role of late, and that's leading to more minutes in general. They've been over 18 minutes a game, all three guys, over the last 10 games. And you talk about how Colorado takes a lot of penalties. They do 3.5 times shorthanded per game. I think that's the fifth most in the league, just behind Minnesota and Detroit that we just talked about. And Matias Maccelli did get moved to the top power play unit. And I think that's a big boost, not only for him, but for the power play unit, because he's turned kind of into a dual threat, both a really good playmaker and a guy that can finish. So I think, him being on the top power play unit, getting Sean Durzi back before the holiday break changes the outlook of that top power play unit quite a bit. So I don't mind Arizona 2 here as a filler stack. If you want to go to Arizona 1, no real issue. There's negative leverage, but it's not like this isn't one of those crazy like 1.6% top two stack and 13% ownership like you might see with Seattle or Calgary or something like that on some nights. But I think I do like Arizona 2 here. They've just been playing better and have a larger sample of playing well. Like Kerfoot that has helped the top line, but it's still a fairly small sample for them. It's only 75 minutes. Like we're talking about like 6 games worth of ice time. So Arizona 2 for me. And again, like you said, if you can fit it in Colorado 1, if you want just one-off Nathan McKinnon, if you want just one-off Mikko Rantanen's up to like 4.4 shots per game or 4.3 shots per game over his last 10 games or something like that. So if you just want to one-off those guys, go ahead. It's just a matter of what you want to do with the rest of your lineup, because you're either going to be stacking a super cheap third or fourth line somewhere, or you're going to be playing a bunch of one-offs. It's not. The one thing I will say is Arizona's been taking a lot fewer penalties. They're down all the way to 3.1 times shorthanded per game, which is like tied for 24th or 25th in the league. So they were in the top 10 earlier in the season. So they've been taking a lot fewer penalties over like the last 6 weeks. And that worries me because Colorado, they can get there at 5-on-5, certainly. But you definitely want it to be a better power play matchup for them. I think that's kind of the way I would put it. Arizona's penalty kill still, nothing to write home about, but they are taking fewer penalties. And when you're paying over half your salary cap for a line, you got to kind of figure out where they can fail. And I think that would be one of the reasons. But it's still a 3.5 total. They probably can constitute like 3 out of 3 of those 3.5 goals. It's still a pretty good matchup for Colorado 1. I'll just say that, but I do like Arizona 2 here.
Yeah, we need Arturi Lehkonen to come back soon, and Nishush can get like a week on the second line, because if he keeps rolling, this line's going to be 27,000 on DraftKings. Because he was like 5,100 when he first moved up to Colorado 1. He's 7,300 tonight. There's like no room to move up McKinnon and Rantanen. Like they're pretty much capped. Like you're going to see 8K Valor Nishushkin pretty soon. It's going to be quite a scene. Winnipeg Jets with a 3.5 total. Heading into Chicago, the Blackhawks have a 2.5 total. The Blackhawks just suck, man. Like, they're so like everyone made big poo-poo about Bedard's Michigan goal, and it was nice. But Binnington sucks. Like, he didn't even try to get over there. And the point I'm trying to make here is the Blackhawks are miserable 5-on-5. Like, miserable. Probably easily in the top 3 worst in the NHL 5-on-5. I like Winnipeg 1 here. The flow chart says don't play him, but the caveat is there isn't a lot of ownership. If Winnipeg was chalk here, then it would be like all the red flags, right? Winnipeg 1 coming in with positive leverage at 6.8% projected ownership. 18,200 is palatable. Gabriel Velarde is an absolute monster on that line. I don't know. I like Winnipeg 1 here, and I like them a lot more than any other line in this game, and it's not close. If you want to win off Bedard, that's fine. The kid's a monster. He looks like he's 9 years old, but he is an unbelievable hockey player. Winnipeg 1, Connor Bedard, going about my day.
Yeah, I'm also kind of in the Winnipeg 1 camp here. Like, since they got put together, again, it's still not a big sample, just 75 minutes, but they've been monsters. 88 shot attempts per 60 minutes, 4.8 actual expected goals per 60 minutes. They're all on the top power play unit. I did notice they have the top power. I don't think the top power play has scored since Kyle Connor got hurt. That's a little bit of a concern. Hopefully Alex, Alex Iafallo, he is what he is. Like I said in a show before the break, he's like pretty good in a net front spot. So now that he's healthy and back in the lineup and on the top power play, maybe he can make a little bit of a difference. But there's no matchup for Chicago, first, second, third line, whatever, that is of any concern for this Winnipeg top line. They're by far the best line in this game. And the thing about Chicago's penalty kill is they haven't been allowing a lot of shots over the last 4 weeks and change. They're just outside the top 10 for shots against, but they've been allowing a lot of goals because their goalies just aren't that good. And it might not be a bad spot for the Winnipeg power play to at least pop one. All they really kind of need to do is pop one, and then you're kind of, you're well on your way, because I think they score at least once at 5-on-5 here tonight. I mean, again, it's the first game out of the holiday break. We'll see who was just eating a ton of turkey and drinking beers and laying on the couch the entire time, and it wasn't. Yeah, guilty as charged as well. But, you mentioned the top stacks. They are coming with a little bit of a positive leverage. Like, little bit of positive leverage against this Chicago Blackhawks team. And Winnipeg has a 3.5 total. This is kind of like Boston, where they're not coming in with a ton of positive leverage, but it's a pretty high total. And this line is, I think, better than Boston's top line. Obviously, David Pastrnak is the best player out of all of them. I'm just talking about a 3-man combination. I think this Winnipeg top line can find some success here tonight. They are one of my favorite stacks on the slate, considering their price is only 18,200. I do like Winnipeg 1 here. I don't have a lot of interest in Chicago. The Winnipeg Jets penalty kill, not great, but Connor Hellebuck is kind of the problem here. Like, he has been really outstanding since basically a bad first week. So that, it's been 2 really good months of play from him. Winnipeg doesn't take a ton of penalties. Chicago still no Seth Jones. Kevin Korchinski's not making a difference on the top power play unit. Nick Foligno's back on the top line with Connor Bedard. 1.9 expected goals for with him there. So, not super excited about that. I just think this is a really, really good matchup at basically at all strengths for Winnipeg. Ehlers has been better since getting to the top line. I think that's a big part of it too. Like, he's creating more quality shots. I like Winnipeg 1 here.
Yeah, Connor Hellebuck, 16.2 goals saved above expected this season. Excellent season after that rough start.
Yeah.
Seattle Kraken with a 2.6 total heading into Calgary. The Flames have a 3 total. This matchup sucks. There's no getting around it. Like, these two teams grind my gears, and now they're playing. At least they're playing each other, so like I can just grit my teeth and shake my fist when they take the ice. But I don't have a ton of interest in this game. shocker, it would be on the Calgary side. All their lines are 12-3. I mean, the Lindholm line is 12-6, but the other two are 12-3. It's like, pick your poison. I'll go to Kadri, Zari, Pospisil. I just like that line. If you like one of the other lines, go for it. I just, you know what? Like, I don't have a ton of interest here. It is a 3 total, so I think you can play in an MME. If you want to use them as a filler in 20 max, you want to use like a one-off Kadri in single entry, sure. But like, I'm not going out of my way to stack the Flames on a 14-game slate. Seattle, at least they're not chalk, but like, I don't have a ton of interest there outside of like the Flames goalies have been pretty bad, but like, I guess like a one-off Tolvanen or one-off Bjorkstrand, or I don't even know, man. Like, Beniers, Eberle, Tatar actually have been pretty good since Tatar got there, and they're 11,100, getting 0.3% ownership. So like, if I was jamming in Colorado 1, that would be a line I would consider playing with them. So like, if I'm playing Colorado 1, you actually can play some stuff from this game. If you're not, I think it's an MME game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the frustrating part about Calgary is their best line is the Kadri line, and it's also the line that gets basically third line minutes. Like, that's kind of the problem with Calgary, is their other two lines aren't really that good offensively. 2.8 expected goals for the Backlund line, 2.1 expected goals. You know, neither of those over 2.6 goals per 60 minutes of 5-on-5, which is about the league average this year, I think. So like, Kadri line's literally the only line that's I would be comfortable saying is better than league average. And there are nights where, like, you know, Pospisil or Zari or whomever will get like 9 minutes. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of the thing that sucks. I don't have any interest in stacking Calgary here. It's actually the Beniers, Eberle, Tatar line that I do like, because listen, Tatar was bad in Colorado. There's no way around it, but he was phenomenal in New Jersey last year. I don't think he just completely forgot how to, and he was really good back in Montreal in, you know, years prior. I don't think he just forgot how to play hockey, you know, 20 games in Colorado or whatever. You know, we've seen players be bad fits there, like Alex Newhook just didn't stand out in Colorado. He looked better in Montreal up until he got hurt. Like, I think there are just some players that don't fit the way that they play, and I think Tatar was just one of them. I think there's still guys on that Colorado roster that don't fit the way that they play, but they can't exactly cut Ryan Johansson. So that Tatar line you were mentioning, still a small, like a really small sample, only 45 minutes, but 72 shot attempts per 60 minutes of 5-on-5, averaging anywhere from 15 to 18 minutes over the 4 games together. They're all on the same power play unit as well. Like, and I know, listen, Seattle's power play is nothing to write home about, but it's still a perfectly coordinated top line that could play about 17 minutes. And when you're only paying 11,100 against the Flames team that hasn't been elite defensively, that hasn't had elite goaltending or anything like that, that would be the one line. You know, I don't mind the Kadri line either, because they are still playing well. They just don't get a lot of minutes. It's the Beniers, Eberle, Tatar line that I wouldn't mind playing out of this game, just because, you know, if this line is good long term, it wouldn't surprise me, because I think Tatar is still a good player. He was just in a bad situation in Colorado. And I could see them being, you know, an above average offensive line, and an above average offensive line that is perfectly correlated on the power play, that could all play around 17 minutes at 11,100 is not something that you get a lot of. It's only 2.6 total. This is not a line I'm running out to play. They're not some secret weapon that I'm kind of holding to play with my super expensive stacks. I just think they're a line to consider, like you said, if you are playing a super expensive line like Colorado 1.
Yeah. New Jersey really misses Tatar. Big hole there. Dawson Mercer, not it. Vegas Golden Knights with a 3.6 total heading into Anaheim Los Patos. The Ducks have a 2.5 total. Very good power play spot for Vegas. I don't know, man. Like, one-off Marchessault, probably my favorite play from Vegas. I guess you could go like Eichel, Stone, Marchessault if you wanted to. I just, like, on this slate, I don't have a ton of love for stacking Vegas. I think they're in a very good spot, but they're one of these teams where it's just like, you could see them winning like 5-1, and Nick Waugh gets a goal, and then Pavel Dorofeyev gets a goal. Eichel has an assist and 2 shots. Barbers, like you don't see like Eichel getting a points bonus with Stone having 2 goals and Barbashev having a 3-point night. Maybe you do, and that's a reason to play him. I think, some sort of power play stack is what I'm going to do for Vegas. On the Ducks side, 13,500 for Terry Zegras Killorn. Not saying play him in single entry, but I think if you're playing the expensive lines and you need a filler for MME, I don't mind that line.
Yeah, I do want to mention Terry and Zegras because they were one of the unluckiest lines in the league before Zegras got hurt. They were at 2.8 expected goals for, only 2.3 expected goals against per 60 minutes before Zegras got hurt, by the way. 0.8 actual goals for. They were shooting under 3% on the ice together. So it's one of those spots where as soon as they, started coming around, they would start filling the net. I don't know if this is necessarily a good spot for that. What I will say is that they're not typically used in a shutdown role. And, the Stevenson-Marchessault line, I think, could be had defensively. So I'm not playing any Anaheim stack in the single entry. I feel very confident about that. But if I was playing, 50 lineups or 150 lineups, I think that Terry Zegras Killorn, perfectly correlated line on the power play, is certainly in play here tonight because once that positive regression kicks in, that's that line is only going to get much more expensive than they are right now. So I don't mind Killorn, Zegras, and Terry if you are playing a bunch of lineups here tonight, but it is Vegas one that I do like best just because I do want to take advantage of the power play. I think I agree with you. I would probably just make it a power play stack, and I would put Eichel, William Karlsson and Stone, or Eichel and Stone and Marchessault or something like that. I think that's the direction I would go. Anaheim's taking 0.75 power is giving up 0.75 more power plays per game than the next closest team. It's something like they're giving up 18% more power plays than the next closest team. Like they are just giving them away like they're on Oprah. So Vegas power play stack is what I do like here. I honestly think this is a game where I'm going to be focusing a little bit more on the defensemen, and we'll get to those when we're done this show or at the end of the show. But Vegas power play, maybe Anaheim one if I'm playing a lot of lineups here tonight.
Yeah, let's get to the last game of the night here. San Jose Sharks with a 2.2 total. Heading into Los Angeles, the Kings have a 3.8. Found the chalk. If you're playing Colorado, it's going to be LA 3. Pierre-Luc Dubois, Arthur Kaliev, Alex Laferriere. 9,500 to full stack, 0.5% top 2 stack percentage, coming in at almost 11% projected ownership. I don't know, man. I would much rather play Seattle 1 than LA 3, given the ownership there. My favorite play in this game is LA 1, 17,700. Kempe, Kopitar, Byfield coming in at projected 2.1%. That line, I just like him. And you could say, oh, maybe the stats are better for LA 2, maybe this and that. I'm a Kempe guy. I think Byfield's going to be a great player in the NHL. Kopitar is kind of just Kopitar at this point. I don't know how to describe him. But at 2.1% with a 3.8 total against the Sharks, I am in on Kopitar, Kempe, Byfield. I think Fiala, Moore, Danault, perfectly good line. They're coming in at 6.7%. A little bit of negative leverage, but like against the Sharks, that's fine. LA 3 coming in at the highest, and I get it because they're so cheap and they fit with the expensive lines. But again, like I'd rather play a cheap line at lower ownership. LA 1 for me. LA 2 is fine. Sharks side, 2.2 total. Don't have a ton of love there. I don't mind an MME taking a stab on San Jose 1 or 2, but like I'm not banking my night on playing some Sharks in this matchup.
Yeah, I will say it's Dave Riddick starting for Los Angeles. It's not Cam Talbot, and Big Save Dave has not been making very many big saves. That's kind of why he's been in the AHL. And, Zadina and Hurdle do have decent offensive numbers together. It's, again, in a small sample, up to 58 shot attempts per 60 minutes at 5-on-5, though. It's just a brutal matchup. The Los Angeles top line, their offensive numbers haven't been as great of late, but they're still generating 72 shot attempts. It's just been the quality that's fallen off a little bit. It's not something that I'm super concerned about. Correlated on the power play unit coming in at 2%. I think I agree with you. Like, I do like the spot here a bit better for Los Angeles too. But considering that the Los Angeles top line is only $1,400 more expensive and coming in at a 1/3 the ownership, I'm with you. I like the Kings top line here tonight. If you want to play Kings 2, Kings 3, Kings 3, I think once I get down to Kings 3, I think I would just turn it into a second unit power play stack, because the Kings second unit has been getting about 40% of the power play time over their last handful of games. So you can do, like, if you want to dilute that ownership, do like Kaliev, Dubois plus Trevor Moore, Kaliev, Dubois plus Danault, something like that. But it is Kings 1 I like best in this game. It's just a tremendous matchup at all strengths for them. San Jose penalty kill is not good. It's just a really, really good matchup for a Kings top line that has been basically pretty good for like a year now, because it was about this time last year that Byfield was moved up to the top line from his depth role, and he's been there ever since. I have a hard time believing Kings 1 is going to only be 2%, but honestly, even if they're 5%, I really don't care. I really do like the Kings top line here tonight. They're also one of my favorite stacks on this slate.
Yeah. You can just straight up power play stack. Like, you can add in Fiala if you got some FOMO on that second line, because the second line always comes in with the most ownership. But yeah. Coming up after us, 5:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Daylight Time. The days are getting longer. We do truly love to see it. NBA Deeper Dive with Josh Engelman and Adam Schur at 6 p.m. Eastern. NBA Live Before Lock with Greg Ehrenberg and Matt Bellman. So if you are playing NBA, stick around for that. Let's talk a little bit about defensemen here. Mikhail Makar tops on the board here. Again, looking at the top range, I think the few that I like the most here are Pietrangelo and Josh Morrissey. Maybe you have a little bit more expensive play that you like, but those are the two that stick out for me. Who else you liking up there and then on the way down?
It was Pietrangelo, Morrissey, and Makar that I had on my list. So, like, we're all pretty close together there. In the mid-price range, the two that really, Brock Faber, he could be the highest owned player on the slate here tonight. Certainly amongst the defensemen. Honestly, don't mind the spot for Zach Werenski that much. Like, let's face it, like we said, New Jersey's goaltending has been a really big problem. And, the Columbus power play has been better since they've gone to this current iteration that they've had. So don't mind Werenski. Also in the mid-price range, Jake Sanderson, Brandon Montour, both running their team's respective power plays. For Pittsburgh, I don't mind Erik Karlsson here, which feels kind of weird to say, but he's still been playing extremely well. Been shooting more. He's up over 3 shots per game over his last 10 games, so I don't mind Erik Karlsson here. Mike Riley for the Islanders. He's just been putting up peripherals like crazy. He's starting to get a bit expensive, but I don't mind him at 4K. For cheaper defensemen, I honestly don't like that 3 to 4K range here on DraftKings tonight for defensemen. There are a few guys in there, Cam Fowler, Timothy Liljegren, Eric Goodbranson, that I don't mind, Ryan McDonough as well. But it is the cheaper, like under 3K guys that I like. Sebastian Aho, the other Sebastian Aho for the Islanders, he's up around 19 minutes a game with all their injuries. He might be good for a block bonus here tonight. Darren Radish with Mikhail Sergachev out for Tampa. Radish is going to be running the second power play unit. Jordan Spence, he didn't play much in that last game right before the break, but up until then, he had been playing a lot more minutes with Vladislav Gavrikov out of the lineup. So if you need a super cheap guy, don't mind Jordan Spence. I know Gavrikov is back, but I still think it's a pretty good power play matchup for Los Angeles 2 here tonight. So I don't mind Jordan Spence if you want to try to get lucky at 2,700 on DK.
Yeah, don't have much to add there. Let's talk about some goalies. I was looking through to see if we got some more confirmed. We did. Connor Hellebuyck, the most expensive on the board at 8,500. I think that's a cash play. I think you have 8,500 left over for a goalie. You can play him in GPPs too, but you definitely need a shutout there. I think Swayman also fine in cash. The 8K range is a bit wonky because you have Igor Shesterkin, Scott Wedgwood, Jacob Markstrom, UC Saros, Martin Jones. I think Shesterkin's fine. I think Saros is fine in GPPs. 7,900 Sorokin definitely stands out as well. I think Vasilevsky for the shot volume, not too bad. Then you get down into the cheap range here. I think Philip Gustafsson at 7,200. Joel Hofer and Devin Levi, 7,100. Interesting. Gibson obviously always gets shot volume at 7K. Then if it is Mackenzie Blackwood at 6,900, I will have some interest there. I'll have less if it's Kakinen at 6,700. Blackwood has been playing well. But again, it's another one of the nights. A broken record. I don't think I'm going to be spending up over 8K for goalie.
Yeah. Number one with a bullet for me is Sorokin. Under 8K, pretty good matchup against Pittsburgh. Don't mind Vasilevsky either. He's not all that expensive in his home matchup against Florida, 7,800. He's also near the top of my list. I wrote up Kaapo Kähkönen because he's 6,700 and he might see the most volume of any goalie here tonight. It's just a matter of whether he lets in 3 goals or 6, which that's the problem when you're playing a San Jose goalie. I also have Jacob Markstrom for Calgary. Seattle, maybe Tatar is going to help them generate some more shots, and Seattle's power play isn't good, so Markstrom might not face a ton of dangerous shots here tonight. So don't mind Markstrom. Connor Ingram Carl Vejmelka. I had Connor Ingram. Carl from Vejmelka for Arizona. If you really want to ride the Lightning. But honestly, if I'm not going to pay up for a goalie, like if I'm going to be down, around that 6,900 range or whatever, I'm just going to play whoever starts for San Jose instead.
Yeah. Just strap on in and go for the ride. Could be a short ride, but, you strap in. Who are you liking for your hat trick pick?
I'm going to go a little bit off the board. We didn't talk about them much on the show here today, but if the goaltending for Dallas doesn't come through, Jordan Kyrou is going to eventually start filling the net, and I'll take Jordan Kyrou here tonight. Yeah,
he had a nice face turn after getting booed off the ice after having comments about whatever. Let's see. I got to go with our flow chart boys. I'm going to go Gabriel Velarde.
Ooh, I like it. Couple wingers here. Let's see what they can do.
So we will be back Friday, 4-game slate tomorrow. We'll be back Friday and Saturday this week. So make sure to stick around for that. You don't have to stay in the chat, but know that we're going to be here on Friday and Saturday. As always, share the link in the description, in the chat. That helps us out. I saw we got to sign up on the show, so thank you very much. And we will be back on Friday. Good luck, everybody.
Good luck tonight, everyone.